everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and this will be most definitely an episode standout for House of the Dragon with its 4th entry of its 2nd season, which was titled The Red Dragon and the Gold. Now there will be spoilers for this episode throughout, so just beware when going into this overall video. And just to quickly recap then on the events of the previous episode, where we saw the beginning of Daemon's supposed mental imbalance as he starts having visions of a younger Rhaenyra. We see Sir Criston Cole continue to push initiatives in the war against Rhaenyra as the Hand, as Aegon increasingly shows his incapabilities as being king. And we had a tense encounter as Rhaenyra secretly infiltrated King's Landing disguised as a nun to meet Alicent and try to reconcile for peace. Alicent rejects her proposals, leading Rhaenyra to reveal the truth about the lineage of the Iron Throne. And if events seemed slow last week, then they were 100% escalated this time round, as we see Sir Criston continuing to work with Aemond in pushing the war effort, much to the disgust of Aegon, once more realising how little of worth he truly is as king. And this was emphasised even more so when we see Aemond outlining his flaws with his tenure, speaking in their native tongue to spare him the embarrassment in front of the council. And this was a really great scene and a typical example of how shows like House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones are so good in really emphasising the different character dynamics throughout the show. And it was great foreshadowing for what we would see come the climactic act. We then see Rhaenyra returning from her meeting with Alicent back to her council, who are increasingly restless at the lack of developments going on in terms of their own involvement throughout the war. We see many individuals with their own pressing desires to go forward and take the battle forward. And I think this emphasises from this season once more just the lack of dominance and control that Rhaenyra and both Alicent have in terms of their council. They really are being undermined left, right and centre, and you do wonder whether this will have true impact as we head towards the final stages of the season. We see once more Daemon's visions to continue as he's based in Harrenhal, as he starts to see one of his ex-wives, and he also has a vision of himself as Aemond. Again, this is very much foreshadowing for what will come to pass as we head further on down the story. And then Rhaenyra finally decides it's time to fight, as her and her council are strategically planning how to combat Criston Cole, who is scoring up a number of victories. They learn of his plans to take Rook's Rest. Even though it's not a massive location, it will once again signify the inability to cause further fractions within Rhaenyra's rule. So they realise that they have to retaliate by use of the dragons, but unfortunately they are lacking numbers. Rhaenyra herself can't fly the dragon because of course she's the leader. Her son Jace can't because of his inexperience. So it's up to Princess Rhaenys to take up the mantle and ride in melees out there to front the fight. We also see then a drunken Aegon recklessly taken to the battle by riding the dragon Sunfire. And then we also see later on the secret plan of Criston and Aemond as he heads with his troops to the Rook's Rest castle. And then we see Vhagar lying sneakily hidden within a forest. And I did think to myself, it's quite the stretch that such a massive beast would be able to conceal himself convincingly in the forest without any notice, but there you go. And as we've seen with previous episodes, he's very adept at providing these sneak hidden attacks. And all of this led to the final 15 to 20 minutes with an all-out battle between 3 of the dragons, as we see Aegon riding Sunfire, Rhaenys riding Meleys, and also Aemond riding Vhagar. And this is when the true immense sensation of this episode came to pass, with a truly epic battle as we saw all of the dragons trying to outmaneuver one another within the sky, exhibiting all the fire as we see their riders come under constant attack. And it was truly breathtaking to watch. Here we can clearly see that this type of episode would have been stretching the budget of the show to its absolute breaking limit. Once more, this is pure cinematic thrills. Almost every shot was convincing, whether we see the dragons on their own or the close-ups of the riders. It all looked absolutely fantastic, so clean and crisp. And I think, yes, overall it was the best dragon sequences of the entire series. We've had sequences of the dragons previously, but those sequences were hidden either in huge smog and fire or in rainfall. But here everything was absolutely clear and crisp, and you can clearly distinguish who the dragons were not only in terms of their size but also in terms of their colour schemes. Where we had the greyish black of Vhagar, we had much more of that golden yellow colour of Sunfire, and then a more reddened, crimsoned contrast of Meleys. And it was all terrific to watch, again showing how good the show is at adapting both the spectacle and also the drama. And there's a lesson here to be learned in how to really visualise action and spectacle in terms of a fantasy series. You can't just have these mindless explosions and effects. There has to be a build up and a suspense to it, and that's what we had particularly throughout this episode. All of those dramatic moments, including at least one instance where Rhaenys could clearly have got away, but then she decides to fly back. Maybe this was a callback to that moment that we remember from the previous season, where she had the instant chance to really kill all of the Allicent dynasty and end the war right there. And this is something that Daemon refers back to her earlier on throughout this season. So maybe that was pivotal in her deciding to fly back, though in hindsight it would have served her and her queen far better had she flown back and survived and reported what happened. But all throughout this sequence we see all of the expressions of Rhaenys. We see her battle weary and hardened, almost relief, where we had that sweeping sequence of her seemingly getting away and getting the victory. We had those awesome sequences when it seemed like she had actually been able to defeat both Sunfire and Vhagar more by outmaneuvering them. And that was fantastic again, how they dramatically built up all of those moments. And then we had that truly gut-wrenching moment where we see Vhagar once more providing his sneak attack, consuming Meleys, biting her at the neck. And then we see all of the disdain and the despair on Rhaenys' face as she realises that this is the end. And then we see her falling devastating on that castle with Meleys as well. And it was truly fantastic, truly breathtaking all the way through. And then of course we had that final shot when, having seen Sunfire fall down with Aegon, we had all of the smoke consuming the forest. We see Sir Criston tapping the back of one of the soldiers just to see them completely fall away, burned and ashed by all of the fire. Absolutely fantastic. And then we had that dramatic pause where we see all of the forest completely decimated as we have that final sequence at the end. And it was truly fantastic for such a great episode. Everything from the action and the excitement, and once more, perhaps suggests that this could have been perhaps the best episode of the series so far, just in terms of pure spectacle. And to be honest, season 2 so far has been getting a lot of criticism for perhaps stalling a bit in terms of the storytelling, not perhaps quite justifying the hype that was generated from the first season. But this episode really debunked all of those criticisms, and you do wonder that this really plays into that narrative style of Game of Thrones as a series, where you have a steady build up and then halfway through or 2/3 of the way into the season we get that all out banging episode. We look at example from the Battle of the Bastards or Hardhome, and this episode was right up there alongside them. But as with both House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, it's not really the action that makes the series so great, it's the character dynamics and development. And in terms of the characters, there was a clear juxtaposition here of the two individuals in terms of Rhaenys and Aegon, where you have two riders of the dragons. We have one who is the older, established figure, riding out really out of duty and loyalty, whilst the younger, more inexperienced king rides out more out of ego, insecurity and childlessness. And that's really been a running theme throughout the entire series so far, where we have the younger generation get elevated to true power and position without fully appreciating it, causing chaos in their wake and not really realising the privilege or opportunity that has been thrust upon them. Now, one character that might do that and show that appreciation is of course Aemond, who really has moved with far more intent and seriousness than all of the other characters so far. How telling he was in those moments where he deliberately lets Aegon move first with Sunfire into the battle despite it being against his plan. Knowing more likely that he would have been killed, you almost felt that he was deliberately doing this so when Aegon eventually met his demise, he could just come in and say that he tried to save him but failed to do so at the end. But then we see that moment where he has Vhagar breathe fire at both of them with intent. So he was clearly decided here that Aegon wasn't worth keeping around and saw this as the perfect opportunity to take him out. And then we see that final moment where Aegon has fallen down, seemingly dead, though some people are hinting that maybe he survived. I really can't see how. That would be serious plot armor if that was the case. But Aemond initially drew his sword before being called back by Sir Criston. So Sir Criston clearly knows that Aemond has intentions to kill the king, and whether he will follow through with those intentions, we will wait and see overall. But at this time, I think Aemond remains the most substantial character, and it will be interesting to see how much they can sustain this personality if the show goes beyond 3 or 4 seasons. But as I mentioned, all in all, this was a great episode. Again, a true example of the potential that the show can reach when given all of the resources and really showing a bit more purpose with its storytelling. Now, as with the same tradition as Game of Thrones, when we get the all-out, explosive, spectacular episode, it's normally followed by a much more quieter one. So hopefully this time that this season can build on the momentum that we saw from this particular episode and really press on with its story, and as we see the war escalate between both of the two dynasties. Because despite the quality, I do think season 2 lacks this certain injection and pace that what we saw with the first season, which of course was helped by all of those time jumps, which really kept a fresh invigoration and kept you really hooked into as to what was going on. Now, we don't have that advantage this time around, so that's why I think it's really important that they really build on the extreme heights that we saw throughout this 4th episode. But most definitely one of the best, if not the best, of the entire series so far, and a major high point in the franchise overall. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings when looking back at the 4th episode of the 2nd season of House of the Dragon. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any other further topics or movies or television series or any other issues within the pop entertainment and culture scene that you'd like to see me cover, then also let me know within the comments, and I'll see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please also hit like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.